everyone, so today I'm going to be putting together a brief tutorial for how to write in sociology and employ different rhetorical strategies in your writing. So success in academics is accompanied by writing, no matter what field you decide to enter. Sociology is no exception to that rule. A key part of being a sociologist is to consistently publish research. In order to learn to write in sociology, we'll analyze articles published by actual sociologists for common rhetorical strategies. If you're going into sociology or planning on publishing in sociology at all, this will be a useful tutorial for how to write in the discipline. So let's talk about how we're going to analyze sociological writing. We're going to be choosing 3 articles to analyze. So I've decided on 2 criteria for deciding on articles. They need to reflect disciplinary norms, and they need to be current. So I've decided to go with the American Sociological Association's journal, the American Sociological Review. This is the most competitive sociological journal. It's kind of a golden standard for the discipline. So people look up to this journal and they try to model their own work after people who are published there. So these are the 3 articles I've chosen. They're all from this year. The first one is the cognitive dimension of household labor, then data collection as disruption, and then rhetorics of radicalism. So before we delve into the rhetorical details, I want to talk a little bit about the format and structure. So as you can see, the title and the author's name are up at the top in the American Sociological Review, and there are footnotes with the author's institutions at the bottom of the page. Then there's the abstract and the keywords in a single column format with the bulk of the paper in a double column format. And the general structure is to have the abstract, and then a literature review, and then methods, and then results, and then a discussion. So let's talk more about the rhetoric of sociology and which sections we'll be focusing on. So the literature review and the discussion, we're going to go into more depth on because the author has to employ more rhetorical strategies and get more creative with their writing in these sections. And then we'll talk a little bit about jargon. So literature reviews can vary in aesthetics, but always fulfill 2 functions. They should examine existing literature on the topic and connect that literature to their own study. 2 examples we'll use here are the rhetorics of radicalism and data collection as disruption. So in rhetorics of radicalism, their literature review is a little more subtle. They don't label it a background or lit review. They just start with the titles that reflect the content. So they go from patterns of radical rhetoric to Afghanistan, crucible of radicalism, to textual data. And notice they're getting broad in their topic to more specific as they're connecting it to their own research questions. And then in data collection as disruption, they do mostly the same thing, except they have a header explicitly labeled background, so it's easier for readers to find the background section or the literature review section. So they go from disruption and interactivity to survey research on study effects to a framework for disruption. So again, they're getting more specific as they get closer to their own research question. It's examining the existing literature and then connecting that to their own research. Next, let's talk about the discussions. So these come at the end of the paper and fulfill 3 rhetorical functions. They connect research to the literature review, they identify studies' limitations, and they discuss suggestions for future research. So the first example I'll look at here is the cognitive dimension of household labor. So this one is more subtle in its headings. Its headings reflect the content of the paper rather than explicitly stating which section of the discussion it is. So it's organized by the content, and they discuss each element in each heading as it relates to their content. So they'll come to one conclusion about their results, and then identify a limitation in their own study, and then suggest future research, and do that for each conclusion that they come to. So it's organized by its content. And then in rhetorics of radicalism, Each element has its own header. So they talk about the conclusions of their results in one section, and then move into the study's limitations and have a bulky section on that where they list out all of them, and then discuss all of their suggestions for future research. So each section is explicitly identified. Either way, each of these articles addressed each of the functions of a discussion. So the organization of the discussion doesn't matter as much as the content and if it's actually fulfilling those functions. Next, let's talk about jargon. So identifying and employing conventional terms in sociology. Jargon is vital to writing in sociology. As sociologists, we write as part of a community. We need to use that community's language when communicating. Jargon in sociology can seem simple, but sometimes means something specific and different from our previous conceptions of the term. So in data collection as disruption is mentioned often, and this isn't just the standard dictionary definition of disruption. The authors define it as academic disruption, so anything that distracts the student from their duty of learning whatever it is they're learning in class. And then in the cognitive dimensions of household labor, they speak about cognitive labor very often in the paper, and that's defined specifically by the author and creates 5 different dimensions for cognitive labor, including planning household work in advance, and thinking about it while you're at work or at school or busy doing other things, and divides it by gender, which was really interesting. So they're conceptualizing these terms and then creating different criteria to fulfill them that are a little different than the standard definitions of the words. So wrapping up, hopefully your understanding of writing in sociology is a little bit more sufficient and good enough to know the standards for publication in the field. Consider reaching out to other online resources to learn more about how to write in sociology. The American Sociological Association is a great resource for modeling your work after other sociologists. So please consider reaching out to those online resources. And we're done.